I hear so many comments about someone said something sexist or a massive deal's made out of the fact that someone made a comment. And I think we've got children dying, children missing, being raped by their thousands in every single town and city, and you're silent. And you're not just silent, but you actually go out of your way. Journalists in this country, not one of them have challenged these reporting restrictions. So these restrictions are put in place so you can have a trial that lasts 2 months and you will not hear anything. And then when the trial finishes, they'll lift the reporting restriction and you'll get 1 day of news. 30 men have been convicted for raping young girls. That's it. You won't hear the details. You won't hear the ins and outs.
Well, it's his second major interview since he was incarcerated for covering a child mass pedophile ring trial happening in England. Tommy Robinson joins us for the next 3 segments. And then we've got a big exclusive breakdown as well coming up on 9/11. It's really good to have Tommy here. You know, I saw him go into jail, and he came out 30 pounds lighter, and the things he went through were amazing. And he's here today to just talk about the battlefront and the acid attacks and the stabbings and the shootings and the bombings that we see happening constantly, and the attempts to outlaw exposing radical Islam, something he 12 years ago, as a business owner, a small town in England, saw happening. So, Tommy, it's really great to have you here. And, you know, I know you've gone through a lot, already put in jail for a year before for exposing this, put back in for 3 months. And I know you've literally got PTSD from it. But, you know, we're all really, really proud of you, my friend.
Yeah, Alex, I'd like to take the opportunity. I know it's the first time I've come back on, but to thank you and to thank all of your watchers and the campaign, to thank there was a movement that was created from my arrest, which is I took satisfaction at that whilst I was in prison, because I know that the reason they do this, or the reason they've done this, to silence and to stop the debate and to stop us raising concerns. And that video you just played, then 7 million people end up watching it in the next 48 hours from when I was arrested. So yeah, I sat from prison and I received mail, so much support, and I know many of the comments were commenting on the support you'd shown me, Alex, and your show had shown me. So thank you personally for that. So the level of rape, the level of abuse. This isn't just sexual gratification for the men doing it. They are literally doing everything they can to destroy the victim, to torture the victim. They are, and this has gone on, I think there's, in every single town, city in the UK that has an Islamic community, there are these rape squads. And the word used in Britain is grooming, which sounds like something cute, doesn't it? Grooming, like you're grooming your dog. This is actually a rape jihad by an invading army. Now, what these men do to some of these victims, if I just talk to you about some of the cities. In one of the cities in the north of England, they took a young 12-year-old girl and they stuck a claw, when they got her pregnant through repeated rapes, they took her to a field and they put a claw hammer up inside her to give her an abortion. They have taken young girls and put their tongues on tables and put nails through them. They have branded young 11-year-old children where they've heated up iron rods with the letter M, and they've scalded it on their bum because that 11-year-old girl was the property of Muhammad. Now, during all of this, families whose children have become victims have gone to the police, they've gone to the authorities, they've cried and they've begged for help. Rather than getting help, now these stories, when you read them, and finally, when we first started talking about this a decade ago, we were branded as extremists and racists, and people simply did not want to believe it. Now we have government reports and government investigations that show and expose the truth in all of this. We've had young fathers. 2 of their daughters are in a house with a dozen Muslim men. Their daughters are 12 and 13 years old. The fathers have got together and they've gone to get their girls back. The police have turned up. They arrested the dads. they leave the girls. So people, and this has gone on from one end of our country to the other, and only since 2010. Since 2010, there was a journalist at Times who worked for the Times newspaper, who actually openly admits that he had been told a decade before. He had had all the information a decade before about these gang rapes of young children. But only when he saw us, who he brands as far right, only when he saw us march in the country did he then think we had to take this issue back from the far right. So he didn't think young children are being raped by gangs of men, we must stop it. The only time he acted, and this is his own words, Andrew Norfolk his name was, and people talk in our country like he should have a knighthood for exposing it. The truth, in his own words, he only began to deal with it because he saw the marches of people he didn't like the look of, who he described as far right. And by what I say is don't like the look of, what he meant was young working class men. And the reason we were marching was because we know it's happening to all of our daughters and our sisters in our community.
A man standing up for little girls is not abusive. I see a pedophile picking a girl up, I'm going to break their goddamn jaw. Excuse me.
Do you know how far back this goes, Alex? So if you look at the Sikh community in the UK, now the Sikh community who have come here, embraced our culture, embraced our identity, worked hard, business owners, never a threat to our nation, that their daughters were being targeted in a similar fashion. And they had to set up a gang. This is all documented. They had to set up a gang in the 1980s called Shila Punjab, SP, where Sikh men, so even up till 2 years ago, 19 Sikh men were put in prison. They were put in prison for going and defending their daughters. And the media always play this down. These gangs were operating freely for 30 years. And our country witnessed a conspiracy of silence from police leaders, community leaders, religious leaders to facilitate this rape. And what's come out in the reports is the reason why the police didn't act, the reason why social services, the organisations put in to protect children, the reason why they actually allowed, when you read the reports, they allowed gangs of men, Muslim men, to come and pick the children up from care homes, sit outside in their car, picking 12-year-old children up, take them away for 3 or 4 days and drop them back in a dishevelled state. And no one fought justice, or no one fought to do something. Anyone in a position of power who tried to whistle-blow and identify these problems was quickly sidelined, fired and targeted. Now, this went on across our whole country. The 2 major cities that people hear about across the world is Rotherham, where 1,400 young children were identified through a charity. So these are just the children that this one charity dealt with during the 20-year period. So 1,400 children. The number will way exceed that. Now in Rotherham, there are only 3,500 Muslim men. Now, when you read the reports of how many people were raping these girls, you can ask yourself, so in Rotherham has a Muslim population of, I think, about 3%. Many other towns and cities in the UK have Muslim populations of 30%. Yet the government have refused. There's an area called Keighley near Bradford, which is a predominantly Muslim area. Now, the government have refused to do a similar style report in any of those largely Muslim areas. The only areas they've done it is where there's not many Muslims. Another city called Telford, where I think there's been 3 or 4 of the victims have been murdered. Their families have been set on fire when they tried to speak out. There was 1,000 young girls identified in Telford. There's not many Muslims in Telford either. So if you see the size of the problem in the 2 cities that they've looked at, which doesn't have a large Muslim population, you can only begin to imagine the size and the proportion of how many children have been destroyed in all the other major towns and cities. In my hometown of Luton, the police have just in the last 3 months made 26 arrests, backdating for child gang rape and grooming in an area of the town that we've all told them for years it's going on. A certain park called Wardown Park and Pope's Meadow Park, an area that we've been telling them it's happening, only now have they started making arrests. But I've travelled the country for the last 10 years, meeting victims' families. One of the conversations I had was with a father from, let's just say, the northwest, from the northwest of England. His daughter was taken, and the Muslim male that took his daughter would ring the dad. So he'd go to the police, they'd do nothing. He'd ring the girl's dad, and whilst him and his father, so you have the Muslim male, and then you have his father with him, are raping this young child, whilst ringing the victim's dad, an Englishman, and leaving the phone on the side and commenting and talking to him. What we tried to explain in this country was this is actually the first time ever. We've had huge paedophile gangs, and there's many within Westminster, but this was the first sort of gang-related phenomenon where brothers, cousins, brother-in-laws, fathers and sons would share the victims. And where, when this gets exposed, rather than their family and their community be disgusted with them,
they defend them.
They defend them. I've also spoke to other communities, Hindu communities and Sikh communities, to hear the stories of the rapes against their daughters. And in every single
because they've been putting up with it for 1,400 years.
Yeah, in every single attack, the rapists, the Muslim men, make comments about the girl's religion. So the fact that she's Sikh, the fact that she's Hindu. Now, we hear so much in this country about hate crime. We hear so much about saying bad things on Twitter or Facebook. Here, we have gangs of men who, every single court case, you hear the victim was called a white English slag, the victim was called a kafar, religiously, racially motivated rapes, yet none of them have ever been charged with any hate crime.
Talk about just what you've been through, how it began, the year in prison, taking your house, the 3 months, losing all the weight, them putting you by the mosque in the jail, them throwing feces on you.
So from when I first started activism, within the first 6 months, my house and my parents' houses were raided by the police 3 times. This became a common theme over the years that continued.
And go back to the town, what you were witnessing.
So we were holding demonstrations and we were highlighting these issues. Now, the same police force that just imprisoned me outside the court case in Leeds, when we first started, I'd organised a demonstration in that police force. South Yorkshire Police Force is the police force that's come out and been proven as hiding all of these problems. Now, when I first come to their borough...
In fact, didn't it turn out in a lot of departments, some of the leading cops are involved in the pimping?
Some of the leading cops, we've had a Muslim police officer who was actually killed in an accident, who was part of it. We've seen, in this South Yorkshire area, I organised a demonstration to come and talk about these issues. But at the time, these issues were not exposed. And the police, as a result of that, arrested me at the airport, raided my wife's house with machine guns, raided my mum and dad's house, put me on false charges that meant I couldn't associate with the organisation I'd formed, my bail conditions made sure I couldn't enter their entire area. So they prevented me from holding a demonstration, they prevented me from talking about these issues. Once the date had gone past of our demonstration, they just dropped all the charges. I actually have it from 10 years ago in black and white writing from an independent police investigation where I put in a complaint that the police accepted what they'd done was politically motivated. They accepted the reason they done it was to silence me, and they sent their police officers on training courses. Now,
so you were politically persecuted. Fast forward to your year in prison, your 3 months, and now what you're facing, because you may be thrown back in.
Yeah, fast forward to, so that has been a common theme over 10 years. If we get to the most recent case, I went to the city of Leeds. In fact, I still have to be careful now because there's still condition on this case. Basically, when I went there, there's a court trial going on. involving 31 people. Now, all the information I'm about to tell you now, which is the whole reason why I'm still arguing my innocence, all this information is in the public domain. Now, when you read the law clearly states a judge has no power to put reporting restrictions on any information that's already in the public domain. Now, what we've witnessed on the last 6 or 7 big Muslim rape trials, that these reporting restrictions are put in place at the very start. And they state that there can be no reporting on this case whatsoever. Okay? So then, if there was reporting, then you'd be getting the details each day of what the men said to the girls, the comments they made, and the horrific abuse that these children have suffered.
Including, even mainstream news admits, a lot of dead girls. Yeah,
plenty of dead girls. Plenty of dead girls. Plenty of girls who've never ever been found. Their bodies have just never been found. I hear so many comments about someone said something sexist, or a massive deal's made out of the fact that someone made a comment. And I think we've got children dying, children missing, being raped by their thousands in every single town and city, and you're silent. And you're not just silent, but you actually go out of your way. Journalists in this country, not one of them have challenged these reporting restrictions. So these restrictions are put in place. So you could have a trial that lasts 2 months and you will not hear anything. And then when the trial finishes, they'll lift the reporting restriction and you'll get 1 day of news. 30 men have been convicted for raping young girls. That's it. You won't hear the details. You won't hear the ins and outs. Well, many of the time, as we've heard from the previous journalist who knew this was happening, Andrew Norfolk, but he only acted when he saw that the far right or the working class were making an issue out of it. I think many journalists despise us that much, despise the working class that much, despise their own country that much. And it depends what newspapers you look into for where the money comes from.
What are they going to do? Because it does seem like they're more and more on their heels. Nationalists are getting voted in everywhere in Europe. Common sense, life force, self-preservation is coming back.
Well, I said this. We had a Day for Freedom demonstration 2 months before I was arrested. And I asked that question. What are they going to do? Because I sit there now thinking, what are they going to do next? Because essentially, I think I'm in the winning seat. And I've said that because everything I've tried to do for 10 years, and I'd be willing to sacrifice my life to bring the change that's needed. Now, I think their intention has been many times to let me be killed or have me be killed, because but now if that happens, after seeing the world response and the response in Britain and across the globe.
Recap what happened to you the 3 months in, and then the latest info coming up next week.
So I went for a judge in Leeds where I was reporting on this trial. I was not asked to plead guilty or not guilty. I was refused the opportunity to speak with my lawyers. The case was not adjourned. The judge didn't even tell me what I'd done or said that amounted to contempt. And he sentenced me to prison. And then, so it took them a matter of hours to sentence me to prison. But then it took me 2 months to get back before a judge to put across our case to say, this is not how the British legal system should work. Thankfully, the highest court in the land, the Court of Appeal, agreed, and they gave a scathing a scathing report against the judge where they said my sentence was unlawful. Everything about it was unlawful. Five major points were unlawful. But the point is, they didn't have to retry me. There's another case of a gentleman called West, where one of the illegalities that the judge done on my case, he done 5 on my case. There was one illegal thing done in a gentleman called West's case, and his conviction was quashed, and there was no retrial. They've decided to retry me at the Old Bailey. Next Thursday, I go to court at the Old Bailey in London, the most senior court of our land, the court that deals with terrorism, high-profile murders, and I'm in court for talking on my iPhone about Muslim men who are raping children. That's why I'm in court. The court case had finished. I wasn't prejudiced in a trial because the
And let's be
trial was
clear,
over.
other news covered what you said and showed it. They didn't get in trouble. You were being persecuted because you are a world leader.
Everything I said was in the public domain. In fact, if you look at what I said, the contempt charge, other journalists such as Rod Liddell have been stopped on contempt for breaching reporting restrictions. He got a £4,000 fine. I spoke to other journalists this week who collapsed the trial. There was 11 men on a murder trial, and he collapsed the trial due to his reporting, and he didn't face any charges.
No, we know you're being railroaded, so let's talk about what you're facing next week and then what you're planning, because...
Next week I face whether I walk into court, as I'd be told, to apologise and plead guilty. So to meet the government halfway, to meet them midway, because at the minute it looks embarrassing for them, because they've been proven that they're persecuting me. They've been proven that their previous trial was unlawful and illegal. So it's whether I walk into court and do that, and then I get to go home, or whether I walk in, and which in fact I won't be doing anyway. I will walk into court with my head held up, and even if I walk out the front door there and then, my head's still held up, or if I go to prison and I come out in a matter of months or however long, then I'll still walk out with my head held up.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
He goes to jail, he goes to jail. Lock him up.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
The scientists at InfoWars Life have created a powerful formula for inflammatory support and joint support. Discover the power of ancient medicine with Bodies. Bodies contains one of the most potent forms of turmeric available. Turmeric has been used for thousands of years and is one of the most studied herbals today. It is well known in traditional medicine for its soothing properties. Our pure turmeric extract plus piperine from black pepper makes for optimal absorption to help boost and support your flexibility, mobility, joint function, immune system, and so much more. Regular turmeric root from the store only contains 1 to 5% of active ingredients, but our turmeric root extract contains over 95% of the active ingredients. Bodies combines turmeric with organic herbs such as spearmint, sage, lemon balm, and thyme to work synergistically for full body support. Try Bodies today at InfoWarsLife.com or call us at 188-253-3139.